Welcome to a new edition of Jazz Perspectives. I'm Mike Price. We're visiting today with Duane Durrett, an old pal of mine from way back in the music business and one of the most steadfast drummers. I'm biased, of course, so don't take that as flattery. Duane Durrett, tell me where you got started playing the drums. Let's go back to the beginning.
Oh,
No
well,
math.
it goes back a way. I'm from Weatherford, Texas, and actually the interest in music was from my family. When I was a little one, I remember on the radio. I remember the Chuck Wagon Gang. I remember hearing them on the radio, and I mean, I was probably 2 years old.
Gospel
or something.
quartet.
Yes, and
based
it
out of
caught
Fort
my
Worth,
ear,
yeah.
and I still remember it. And I had to be very young, but as I grew up, my father and mother would have people come over to the house and play piano and sing, and my dad was an amateur piano player, and but we had players come in, and my mother would cook, and you know, music was valued in my home.
Yeah.
And so I started listening to all types of music, and without any regard to, you know, who created it or who performed it. I just, you know, there was just some music I liked. Yeah. And usually the gospel early on caught my ear.
Was it the harmony? Was it the meter?
Harmony, rhythm, you know, I think what always got me was gosh, I'm at a loss for words, but if they were meaning it.
Yeah.
I mean, if they were serious about what they were singing, you can tell it.
Yeah. Well, the whole basis of rhythm and blues.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now
the Chuck Wagon Gang obviously was very much in the white rural gospel tradition.
Oh yeah.
What about black gospel styles?
Yeah. It didn't matter. I just you know, if I heard music and I liked it. In fact, when I was in junior high, I'd never paid any attention to where it came from, or black or white, and I was listening to people like Bobby Bland and Otis Redding, real early Otis Redding. This was like 57, 58.
Sure, when he was on King Records.
Yeah, Stax.
Yes.
Because I remember buying one. And my friends were listening to the Beach Boys and things like that, and I couldn't identify with that. And I was listening to James Brown and Bobby Bland. And of course, on the radio back then, you would hear things like Nat King Cole. I heard, of course, Dave Brubeck, that Take Five, when that came out, that was popular, and some things like that. But then, 57, 58, 59, whenever it happened, I'll never forget, I was riding in the car with my mother, and I heard What'd I Say, and my life was changed.
1959?
I think about then, right in there. And I thought, that's it.
Ray Charles.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, the first time I heard that Wurlitzer electronic piano, I figured it had to be an instrument from outer space, because no piano I'd ever touched sounded like that. And doggone if the following week or so my piano teacher didn't install a Wurlitzer electric in her studio as a backup rehearsal instrument. Touched that keyboard and said, my gosh, I've got Ray Charles piano.
It was cutting edge technology.
Very much on that edge.
But that rhythm that was played, you know, it just caught me. And at that time, what the drummer was doing, it was just incredible. And it was something that, you know, just you didn't hear on, the average person didn't hear it. Now, it was getting played, but it was in the black community, and it came out of that.
At what stage did you first begin playing yourself?
Well, I took piano lessons. I always played by ear, then took piano lessons, and I got my first set of drums when I was in the 7th grade, I think, and my dad drove a truck. And he got in one night real late, it was 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and he'd gone to Canada, and he'd bought a set of drums for me for $50. And so he got in, and I got up, and I unloaded those drums. And I mean, they He bought them for $50, and he probably spent too much on those drums. But I set them up, and I just had to see if I could play, because I've been playing on hat boxes and pots and pans, playing along with the record. I remember playing with along with Marty Robbins.
Yeah.
I always liked Marty Robbins, and so I was playing along with him, and along with Otis Redding and other things, playing on the hat box. I bought some drumsticks, and I was playing, and so he got those, and I had to see if I could do a roll, and I could.
What you by this time you now had the actual sticks.
Oh yeah, I had some sticks, and so I went to bed that night, and I knew that when I woke up in the morning, I was a drummer.
Oh yeah.
So I started, and I was self-taught for a long time. Didn't learn to read until later on. And but I self-taught, listened, just soaked in everything I heard, tried to.
Yeah. Marty Robbins, Otis Redding, Southern Gospel in general. Now, how does that lead into the jazz identity for which you've become best known?
Well, first off, I just hate titles.
Sure.
Categories, and that's the world seems to thrive on those things today, but it's just music.
Yeah.
As Duke Ellington said, there's only two kinds, good and that other kind. And it doesn't matter who creates it or how it's created. If it's good, and good music is usually spiritual in some form. It is to me.
Yeah.
But there were some friends in Weatherford that when I met them, we went to their house. My friend Jim Shannon, who's a guitar player, and we had a band. And Jim is a player now, and a wonderful player, incredible jazz guitarist. He's in Dallas. But he took me down to Raymond and Clyde George's house where they rehearsed. And this was, at that time, they were called Little Eddie and the Rays. And this was a very popular band. And of course, they were doing all the Chuck Willis and, of course, all of the thing that the black bands were playing. But I heard them doing a Jimmy Smith thing. And then I heard Jimmy Smith with Stanley Turrentine for the first time. And I thought, I don't know what it is, but that's it. So that pretty much sewed it up for me. Jazz is a language that you have to learn, and you study it, you absorb it, you learn what it's all about, and then you go with it.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, I knew this was it, and it's been a lifelong pursuit. And these are still people that I love and work with, and thank for letting me be part of a group. I went on to work with them always. We'll probably talk about that a little later.
Yeah.
We got into the jazz scene in Fort Worth, which there used to be a real jazz scene in Fort Worth, believe it or not.
It's trying to come back.
Yeah, well, I hope so. And I was very lucky in the 60s to be part of that and meet people, and Ornette Coleman, people like that.
Yeah.
That's how I got hooked up, right there in Weatherford, Texas. But believe it or not, there were some great players that came out of Weatherford, Texas.
Oh, yes, yes. How long a time between the receipt of your first drum kit elapsed before you became what you'd call a working musician?
Probably about a year. I started my first job, and my mother didn't know it. My first job was in Mineral Wells, Texas, and I go by that place, as there's also a place out on the Jacksboro Highway that I played later, and I go by these places and I just cringe, but I thought, Lord, this is not a place I would want to be. But when you're 14 years old and you're wanting to play music and you're just getting started, it doesn't matter. That looks like, the great performance hall.
That's where it happens. That's where the root of it lies.
That's where you learn.
Tough establishments, but what a training ground.
No shortcuts. If you want to learn to play music, you've got to be in an environment where you play your instrument every night, and I was playing my instrument every night, and you learn, you make those mistakes, and you learn from those mistakes, and then you hopefully you progress in learning your instrument.
What early artists do you credit with giving you that opening to come in and start making music on a professional level?
Well, of course, working with the Rays, Clyde, I mentioned them, Clyde George, Raymond George, Jim Shannon, and we had worked with a group. I worked with, in Fort Worth, I worked with people like Eddie Miller, piano player, Donnie Stevens, guitar players, Lon Price, saxophone players, and this was when I was in high school, working out on the Jacksboro Highway, and working the Rocket Club. I think that's the name of the place, but places where you actually work behind chicken wire, and I was real thankful for that chicken wire too. So.
Yeah, I know those places. Sure. The natural integration of your musical career seems to have come without any particular effort on anybody's part.
Oh yeah, these are just people that were musicians just like myself,
right.
And the fact that somebody's black and white or whatever else, it really didn't matter.
Yeah,
now
like
it seemed to, back in the '60s, it seemed to matter to other people. I would be a couple of times people would say things to me. I was almost beat up one time because I was traveling with this black group, and how dare you, and that type of thing. So, so were you aware of it? Yeah, certainly.
Sure.
But did it matter? Absolutely not. And these are people that you care about because they care about the same thing. You're caring about music, and everybody's trying to work together to be the very best you could be and to be together. And there was a brotherhood here that was established, and it still exists.
Sure.
And then later on, as people like when we were on with the organ group, the Rays, when we came into Fort Worth, then we start getting with other people like James Clay and David Newman and Hank Crawford, where, you think, my gosh, you're working with these caliber of people. So.
Well, the associations you developed, I'm thinking particularly of Fathead Newman, have lasted into the present day. How does that come about? How have you maintained those affiliations?
Well, there again, he worked with us a lot.
Yeah.
He used us. We traveled with him. We traveled all over Texas. We originally were going to go. He had set up for us to go play in Philadelphia. And Atlantic Records, who he was recording for at the time, was coming down to listen to us. For some reason, it didn't come off, and I'm not sure why it didn't come off. But you talk about one sick puppy. I mean, I was just sick because we were going to be up there for a week, and Atlantic Records was coming down to listen to this group.
What year was this?
This was '68.
Yeah.
Right in that time, and we were at that time working at the Malibu Club. We worked 4 or 5 nights a week at the Malibu Club, and it's in Fort Worth, on Mitchell Boulevard, which is on the south side, and we worked from 10 till 2, and I worked 5 nights a week, and I think might have made $30 a night. But I had all the money I needed at that time, and of course, we worked with, David Newman, James Clay, Mac Goldsberry, Marshall Ivory, people like Rasan Roland Kirk came in. This was where all of the great jazz musicians in the area would come. So,
pretty astonishing track record. You have maintained your ties to Weatherford all along.
Yeah.
And somehow translated the career as a working artist into an educational career.
Yeah.
Now, how did that all develop?
Well, You know, it's out of necessity. I was, the music business had taken one of those downturns. You know, I'd never done anything, well, I'd worked at something pretty much always, but at this time, that's all I did was music. And playing jazz, not just music, but jazz. And so anyhow, I'd take in the 70s, about 73, more the scene just started deteriorating. And so I was doing some other day work too, but playing at night. But friends of mine wanted to know if I would take this 3-month job with Weatherford College to recruit students using the jazz band. Now, at that time, it wasn't a jazz band. There were some kids with some horns.
A music program.
Yeah, and it wasn't good.
Kind of generic, I know. Yeah.
And so, anyhow, I said, yeah, but I said, I'm going to make it into something. You know, I'm not going to just, this isn't going to be as good as it gets. And so, with a lot of hard work and a lot of talented young people, that program turned into a very good program. Very proud of that. Very proud of that.
And how many years has that carried on? 70?
Well, I started in 75 at Weatherford College, and I had the jazz band through 1990.
Yeah.
And the band had grown to such a big program. We were the first community college as the featured artist at the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland. And we were with Dizzy Gillespie and his orchestra. And I have the recording of it, and it's just incredible that this band, what they were able to achieve.
C'est le Weatherford College Jazz Band. Et nous avons un vieil ami de Montreux qui est venu plusieurs fois, qui est l'un des solistes, David Father Newman. Et le directeur de l'orchestre, Duane Durrett. So let's hear it for the Weatherford College Jazz Band from Texas.
And again, we were doing where I came from, the jazz, rhythm and blues, swing style of music. And I think every tune but one that we did on that night was probably a blues tune, a jazz blues style tune, other than maybe a Miles Davis tune. But yeah, good program. It's still going at Weatherford College, and so that's great musicians have come out of there.
Now, since 1990, what's been your relationship to the jazz program?
I'm not really, I'm not really involved with it, other than the guys that are running it. Tom Birchill came after me, and Cal Lewiston has it today. And they're good friends of mine. I've worked with both of them. Both of them are great musicians.
That's a lasting accomplishment. And what did Weatherford think of the jazz studies program in 1975? What was the response there?
Oh, they just tolerated me, I think. Sure. But when it started, bottom line was what they liked, and when students started coming, they thought, whoa, this is something that attracts students. But then there was a lot of notoriety, and you know, it still exists today. Several years ago, I was at DFW, and I had down checking in my luggage, and there was something with Weatherford College on it, and one of the guys said, oh yeah, this is a college with the band. You know, and just little things like that, you know, because we played, the year that the band went to Montreux, this band, I had them on the road constantly.
How many members there?
18. Yeah, with a vocalist.
Wow.
With a vocalist. And they traveled constantly. We played concerts, we played the Caravan of Dreams, we played the White Elephant Saloon. We played anything that we could get in to play. And that, there again, goes back to the secret of how you get to a good, individually, musically, a good person or a group. You know, there's no secret to it. It's just work.
What about modern day influences? Who are you listening to today?
Oh, I really listen to everybody, but the people that influenced me the most, first off, John Coltrane.
Oh, yeah.
You know, in the spiritual, besides the musical, the spiritual, John Coltrane, for me, brings out a spiritual quality in me, and of course I hear it in his music, and I think that was his whole goal. He was on a spiritual journey, and music was how he carried it out. And so Elvin Jones, the drummer with him, I listen to constantly. That's one style of playing drums, but Billy Higgins, all of, you know, things that Billy did, and then of course those are the two of the drummers. A good friend of mine, Billy Hart, you know, has played with Miles and Kenny Barron and everything, and he is one that I listen to. Just all of the players. I really do listen to everything. Wayne Shorter, listen to Wayne Shorter a lot. The piano players, Kenny Barron, and then there's a lot of the young players coming on that I'm really listening to. Eric Alexander on tenor saxophone, Jason Moran on piano. I've got some guys that came out of Weatherford that are now on the scene. Whitney Russell on trumpet, Keith Loftus on tenor saxophone, Fred Sanders piano, and at one time we had a couple of our exes from Weatherford College on Wynton Marsalis's band. In fact, when they were here at Weatherford, at Bass Hall, two of the players, the piano player and one of the trombone players, came out with the Weatherford band.
Ooh-wee. Yeah. How many players from Weatherford overall have moved on into careers? Have you kept track of that?